The map of the galaxy hung in the air like a dream made of light. Thousands of star systems glowed in soft blue, each one belonging to the Empire. High Commander stood before this map with his hands behind his back and pride burning in his chest. He had conquered 12 worlds himself. He had never lost a single battle. But there was one small dot on the map that glowed red instead of blue. It sat at the edge of known space, far from the center of the Empire. The label next to it was simple: Sol System, Forbidden. Had always hated that red dot. It was an insult. The mighty Empire controlled 3,000 star systems, yet they were told to stay away from one tiny solar system with one small planet called Earth. The ancient laws of the Galactic Council said no species could enter that space. No one could wake what sleeps there, the old texts warned. But did not believe in old warnings. He believed in power, and power belonged to those who took it. He walked through the golden halls of the Imperial Palace on the capital world of Prime. Servants moved out of his way. Soldiers saluted as he passed. He was the greatest military commander the Empire had seen in 500 years, and everyone knew it. The throne room doors opened before him. Emperor IV sat on a chair made of black crystal, watching approach with tired eyes. The emperor was old now. His blue skin had faded to gray, and his 4 arms rested weakly on the armrests of his throne. But his mind was still sharp, and his hunger for resources was endless. "You requested an audience," the emperor said. "Speak." Bowed his head briefly, then stood tall. "My emperor, I come to discuss the Sol system." A murmur went through the advisors standing around the throne. The emperor raised one hand to silence them. "The Forbidden Zone," said slowly. "What of it?" "It should not be forbidden," answered. "The ancient laws are based on fear and superstition. Our scouts have observed the system from a distance. The planet Earth went silent 400 years ago. Their radio signals stopped. Their space activity ceased. They are either dead or primitive. Either way, they are no threat to us." The emperor leaned forward slightly. "And why should we care about one small system?" "Resources, my emperor." Waved his hand, and the holographic map appeared between them. He pointed at the Sol system. "Rich asteroid fields, gas giants full of fuel, rare minerals on their inner planets. We need these resources for the war effort against the Collective." This caught the emperor's attention. The war against the Collective had drained the Empire's supplies. They needed fuel, metal, and materials. The Sol system could provide all of this. "The Galactic Council will protest," one advisor said nervously. "The law is clear. No species may enter Sol space." Turned to face the advisor with cold eyes. "The Galactic Council is weak. They make laws but have no power to enforce them. What will they do? Send angry messages? We are the Empire. We take what we need." The emperor was quiet for a long moment. His old eyes studied the red dot on the map. Finally, he spoke. "What do the ancient archives say about this forbidden zone?" Another advisor stepped forward, holding a data tablet. "The records are very old, my emperor. They say that the species called humans developed technology at an unusual speed. 500 years ago, they were primitive. Then they advanced rapidly. The Galactic Council placed the forbidden designation after an incident." "What incident?" the emperor asked. The advisor looked uncomfortable. "The records are unclear. They mentioned that a survey fleet from the old Empire entered Sol space to make contact. 40 ships. None returned. No signals, no wreckage. They simply vanished." Laughed. "The Empire fell apart from internal weakness. Their ships probably had engine failures. This is ancient history based on incomplete records. We are not the. We are. Our technology is superior to anything in this galaxy." The emperor considered this. His 4 hands tapped against the armrests of his throne in a slow rhythm. The advisors waited in tense silence. "Send a scout ship first," finally decided. "One ship. Let it observe and report. If the system is truly abandoned or primitive, then we will discuss a larger operation. Smiled, this was the first step. Once the scout ship reported back, he would have his invasion fleet. It will be done, my emperor. 3 weeks later, a single scout ship crossed the boundary of the Sol system. It was called the Whisper, and it carried a crew of 12. Their mission was simple: observe, scan, and report. The Whisper passed through the cloud, the distant shell of ice and rock that surrounded the system. Everything was quiet. The pilot, a young named, watched his screens carefully. He saw nothing unusual, just ice, rocks, and empty space. Beginning deep scan of inner system, he reported to his captain. The scan reached outward, touching the distant planets: Jupiter, Saturn, Mars, and then Earth. The moment the scan touched Earth, something happened. Every screen on the Whisper flickered. Every system made a soft chiming sound. And then, on the main display, words appeared. They were not in any language. They were in an old Earth language called English. But the ship's translation system converted them instantly. The message said, "You were warned, turn back." Captain stared at the screen with wide eyes. "What is this? Who sent this?" "I do not know," Captain answered. His hands were shaking. The message came from everywhere, every direction at once. Tried to send a signal back to the Empire, but the communication system was not responding normally. It was working, but something was interfering with it. He could only send a short burst transmission. He spoke quickly into the communicator. "This is the Whisper. We have entered Sol space. We have received a warning message. The system is not abandoned. They see us. Repeat, they see us. Request immediate." The transmission cut off. On the dark side of Earth's moon, in a base that did not appear on any galactic map, Admiral received the alert. He was a tall man with gray hair and calm eyes. He had waited his entire life for this moment. Part of him had hoped it would never come. He stood in a command center filled with screens and officers. Every screen showed the same thing: a small ship drifting at the edge of their system. "They actually did it," Lieutenant said from her station. She was younger than most officers, but her skills had earned her a place in this hidden command. "They actually entered our space." Admiral nodded slowly. "The arrogant, as we expected. That scout ship will report back to their empire. More will come." "Should we destroy the scout?" another officer asked. "No," Admiral turned to face his people. These were the defenders of Earth, the secret guardians who had protected humanity's silence for 4 centuries. They had trained for this. They had prepared for this. And now the moment had arrived. "Let them report," he said. "Let them tell their emperor what they found. Let them send their fleets." He paused and looked at the image of the tiny ship on the screen. 400 years of silence, 400 years of waiting. It ends now. He pressed a button on his command console. Across the solar system, in hidden bases on moons and asteroids, and in ships disguised as rocks, lights began to turn on. Engines that had been sleeping for decades began to wake. "Send the word to all stations," Admiral ordered. "Wake the sentinels." The officer next to him hesitated. "Sir, once we reveal ourselves, there is no going back." "I know." Admiral looked at Earth through the observation window, his home, his world, the world his ancestors had protected by hiding it from the galaxy. They were given a warning. Every species in the galaxy knows the law. Earth space is forbidden. They chose to ignore it. He turned back to his officers. His voice was steady and cold. "Now they will learn why." The news of the scout ship's transmission spread through the Empire like fire. The Sol system was not empty. Something was there. Something that could see their ships and send warnings across space. But High Commander did not feel fear. He felt excitement. After years of easy conquests, he finally had a real challenge. He stood before Emperor once again, this time with a bold request. 3 battle fleets," he said. 2,400 warships. Enough firepower to burn a planet to ash. I will take this force to Sol space and show these humans what happens when you threaten the Empire." The Emperor studied him with tired eyes. "The Galactic Council has sent warnings. They say we should respect the Forbidden Zone." "The Council is afraid of shadows," replied. "I am not. Whatever technology these humans have, it cannot match the combined power of 3 battle fleets. We have conquered species with advanced technology before. We will conquer again." Emperor was silent for a long moment. The war against the Collective was draining his resources. He needed the minerals and fuel from the Sol system, and he needed a victory to show his people that the Empire was still strong. "Go," he finally said. "Take your fleets. Secure the system. Bring me proof that the Forbidden Zone is nothing but an old superstition." Smiled and bowed. "It will be done, my Emperor." 1 month later, 3 battle fleets jumped into the outer edge of the Sol system. 2,400 warships arranged in perfect formation, their weapons charged and their shields at full power. At the center of this massive force was the flagship, a ship called the Dominion. High Commander stood on its bridge, watching the stars through the main viewport. Sub-Commander stood beside him. She was tall for a female, with dark blue skin and worried eyes. Unlike, she had read the old archives carefully. She knew about the fleet that had vanished here 500 years ago. She knew about the warnings that other species had recorded over the centuries, but she kept her concerns to herself. Did not like officers who showed doubt. "All ships report ready," she said. "We are beginning our approach to the inner system." "Excellent," clasped all 4 of his hands behind his back. "Time to show these humans the power of the Empire." The fleet moved forward, passing the orbit of Neptune, then Uranus. Everything was quiet. The sensors showed nothing but ice, rock, and empty space. Some officers began to relax. Perhaps the warning had been a bluff. Perhaps the humans were hiding in fear. But as they crossed the orbit of Saturn, strange things began to happen. "Commander," a sensor officer called out, "I am getting unusual readings." "What kind of readings?" asked. "Ghost signatures, ships that appear on sensors for a moment and then vanish. But they are everywhere, behind us, ahead of us, all around us." Walked to the sensor station and looked at the screen. He saw the flickering dots that appeared and disappeared like stars blinking in the night. "Sensor malfunction," he said. "Our equipment is having trouble with this system's magnetic fields." "Sir, I do not believe that is the cause," the officer replied nervously. "These signatures move with purpose. They are circling us." Checked her own console. Her face grew pale. "Commander, I cannot reach the Empire. Our long-range communications have been blocked." This caught his attention. He turned to face her with sharp eyes. "Blocked by what?" "I do not know. Some kind of interference field. We can communicate between our ships, but nothing can leave the system. We are isolated." For the first time, a small seed of doubt planted itself in his mind, but he pushed it away. He was High Commander of the fleets. He had never lost a battle. He would not start now. "Continue the advance," he ordered. "Whatever is out there, we will find it and destroy it." The fleet pushed forward. They passed the orbit of Jupiter, then Mars. And then, as they approached the blue planet called Earth, the ghost signatures on their sensors suddenly became solid. Thousands of ships appeared at once. They rose from behind Earth's moon. They emerged from the asteroid belt. They came up from beneath the ice of moons and from inside hollowed-out rocks that had seemed like natural formations. Black ships with sleek designs that no had ever seen before. Ships that made no sound on any communication frequency. Ships that moved in perfect silence. The sensor officers stared at their screens in shock. "Counting enemy vessels," one said, his voice shaking. 4,000, 5,000, still counting, sir, they outnumber us." Gripped the railing in front of him. His 4 hands tightened until his knuckles turned white. "That is impossible. The scans showed nothing. Where did they come from?" "They were hiding," whispered. They were hiding in plain sight, disguised as asteroids, buried under ice, waiting. On the bridge of the Sentinel ship, Captain Minyu Li watched the fleet through his viewport. He was a middle-aged man with a face and steady hands. He had trained his entire life for this moment. His crew had trained for generations. And now, finally, they would show the galaxy why Earth had remained hidden. Lieutenant sat at the tactical station beside him. She was young, fierce, and had never seen real combat, but she had run thousands of simulations. She knew exactly what these alien ships could do, and she knew exactly how to stop them. "Admiral is on the command channel," she reported. Captain Minyu Li nodded. "Put him through." The Admiral's voice filled the bridge. It was calm, steady, and cold. "All Sentinel commanders, this is Admiral. They have entered our space with hostile intent. They were warned. They ignored the warning. Now we teach them the price of their arrogance." He paused for a moment, then continued. "Remember your training. Remember why we hid. Remember why our ancestors chose silence over war. We did not want this fight, but we prepared for it. Now show them what humanity can do." Captain Minyu Li looked at his crew. Engineers, pilots, weapons officers, and medical staff. All of them human. All of them descendants of the generation that had chosen to disappear from the galaxy rather than conquer it. And all of them ready to defend their home. "You heard the Admiral," he said. "Let us begin." On the Dominion, High Commander watched the human fleet arrange itself in a wall between his ships and Earth. He had never seen ships like these before. They were beautiful in a terrible way. Smooth black surfaces that seemed to absorb light. No visible weapons. No visible engines. Just dark shapes moving through space with impossible grace. "All ships prepare to engage," he ordered. "Target their lead vessels. Fire on my command." "Sir," said quietly, "perhaps we should attempt communication first. Perhaps." Communication turned to her with fury in his eyes. "They sent us a warning like we were children. They hid from us like prey. I will not speak to them. I will destroy them." He raised his hand to give the order to fire. But before he could speak, every screen on the Dominion flickered. A new message appeared. Not words this time, but a single image. The symbol of Earth, a blue sphere against black space. And then a voice spoke. It came through every speaker on every ship at once. A human voice speaking perfectly. "This is Admiral of the United Earth Defense Force. You are in violation of galactic law. Sol space is forbidden to all species. You were warned at the boundary of our system. You chose to continue." The voice paused. Every in the fleet was listening, even stood frozen. "Your communications have been blocked. Your retreat path has been sealed. You cannot run. You cannot call for help. You are now inside our home, and in our home we make the rules." Admiral's voice grew harder. "You were warned. The warning was your mercy. There will be no second mercy. Stand down your weapons and prepare to be boarded, or we will demonstrate why the galaxy learned to fear this place. You have 60 seconds to decide." Stared at the screen for a long moment. Then he laughed. It was a harsh, angry sound. "Fear. They want us to fear them. They hide for 400 years and then dare to threaten us." He turned to his weapons officer. "Target their flagship. All batteries, fire." The Dominion's weapons came to life. Plasma beams and missiles launched toward the human ships in a wave of destruction. 200 other ships fired at the same moment. It was enough firepower to crack a moon. The weapons crossed the distance in seconds. They reached the human ships, and then they stopped. They simply stopped. Missiles hung frozen in space. Plasma beams bent around the human ships like water flowing around a rock. Nothing touched them. Nothing came close. The lieutenant watched her screens with a small smile. "They fired first. Good." Captain Minyu Li nodded. "Now we respond. All ships engage. Show them what 400 years of preparation looks like." The human fleet moved forward, and the Empire learned the true meaning of the word forbidden. The battle began, But High Commander quickly realized it was not a battle at all. It was a lesson. The human ships moved through space like ghosts. They did not fly in straight lines like vessels. They seemed to slide through reality itself, appearing in one place and then simply being somewhere else. Gunners tried to target them, but their weapons always hit empty space where the ships had been a moment before. "What is happening?" shouted. "Why can we not hit them?" His weapons officer shook his head in confusion. "Sir, they are not dodging, they are not moving fast, they are just not there when our weapons arrive. I do not understand." The lieutenant explained the situation to a young officer who was watching his first real engagement. "We call it phase shifting," she said. "Our ships exist slightly out of sync with normal space. Their weapons pass through us like light through water. 400 years of research went into this technology." Captain Minuli watched the fleet through his viewport. He could see their confusion and panic. Ships were firing in all directions, wasting ammunition on targets they could not touch. It was almost sad. "Begin the counterattack," he ordered. "Gravity snares on my mark." The human ships stopped evading. They formed a line facing the fleet, and then from each ship something launched. Not missiles, not beams, small spheres of perfect darkness that flew toward the enemy ships. A cruiser was the first target. The dark sphere touched its hull and attached itself. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the cruiser began to crumble. It folded inward like paper being crushed in a fist. Metal screamed. The ship collapsed into itself, getting smaller and smaller until it was just a ball of compressed matter the size of a fist floating in space. The fleet watched in horror. "What was that?" Subcommander whispered. Could not answer. He had no words. He had just watched a ship with 3,000 crew members get crushed into a marble-sized piece of metal in less than 10 seconds. More dark spheres flew toward the fleet. More ships began to collapse. Destroyers, cruisers, carriers. Each one folded into itself like a dying star, crushed by forces no scientist had ever imagined. "Those are miniature black holes," a science officer said, his voice breaking with fear. "They are creating localized gravity wells. They are crushing our ships with artificial gravity." "That is impossible," said. "That technology does not exist." "It exists for them," replied quietly. On Luna Base, hidden beneath the surface of Earth's moon, engineer Sung watched the battle through a holographic display. He was a thin man with tired eyes and gentle hands. Those hands had designed the gravity snares now tearing through the fleet. He had hoped they would never be used. Dr. Park stood beside him. She was the chief scientist of Project Veil, the program that had kept Earth hidden for 4 centuries. Her work had created the phase shift technology that made human ships untouchable. Now she watched that technology being used in war for the first time. 15 enemy vessels destroyed, an analyst reported. 200 disabled. Their formation is breaking apart. "They are trying to retreat," Sung observed. Dr. Park nodded. "They cannot. We have folded space behind them. Their escape route does not exist anymore. They are caged." Sung looked at her. "We could end this quickly. Use the stellar weapons, destroy them all." "No," Dr. Park shook her head. "We are using less than 10% of our capability. We do not want to destroy them. We want survivors. We want witnesses who will go back to their empire and tell them what they saw. Fear spreads faster than fire." In the fighter bays of the human fleet, Pilot climbed into her ship. She was 26 years old with short black hair and eyes that sparkled with excitement. She had trained in simulators since she was a child, dreaming of this moment. Now it was finally here. Her fighter was called a Phantom. It was small, fast, and equipped with the same phase technology as the larger ships. In simulations, she had destroyed thousands of enemy targets. Today, she would do it for real. "All Phantom squadrons launch," came the order. Ship shot out of the bay like a bullet. Around her, hundreds of other Phantoms launched from carriers throughout the human fleet. They flew toward the ships in perfect formation. The gunners saw them coming. They fired everything they had at the small fighters. Beams of light crossed the space between the fleets. Missiles exploded in massive fireballs. The Phantoms flew through all of it untouched. Laughed as plasma beams passed through her cockpit like colored shadows. "They really cannot hurt us," she said over the squadron channel. "It is almost not fair." "Stay focused," her squadron leader replied. "Target their engines. We want them disabled, not destroyed." The Phantoms reached the fleet and began their work. They flew through enemy shields like the shields were not there. They slid through hull plating like ghosts passing through walls. And when they were inside the enemy ships, they became solid just long enough to fire. Engines exploded. Power cores shut down. Navigation systems failed. One by one, the great warships of the fleet went dark and began to drift. On the Dominion watched his fleet die around him. Not die exactly. The humans were not destroying ships anymore. They were just stopping them, turning off their power, killing their engines, leaving them drifting in space like dead fish. "Why are they not finishing us?" he asked. "Understood. They want us alive. They want us to go back and tell our emperor what happened here. They are sending a message." An alarm screamed. The Dominion shook violently. Somewhere in the ship something had exploded. "Main engines are offline," an officer reported. "Weapons are disabled. Shields are failing." "How?" demanded. "Our shields were at full power." "They flew through the shields, sir. They were inside our ship. They destroyed our systems from the inside." Stood alone on his failing bridge. Everything he believed had been wrong. The Empire was not the greatest power in the galaxy. They were not the most advanced species. They were children playing with toys while the humans had built weapons that could reshape reality itself. In the archives of Luna Base, an old woman named O was watching the battle on a small screen. She was 67 years old, with white hair and calm eyes. She was the archivist, the keeper of Earth's true history. She knew secrets that even Admiral did not know. "It is happening again," she said to herself, just like the others before them." She opened an ancient file on her computer. It was dated 500 years ago, from the early days of humanity's advancement. The file contained the decision that had shaped everything since. 500 years ago, human scientists had made a series of breakthrough discoveries: dimensional folding, entropy reversal, stellar engineering. They learned how to bend space, reverse time on a small scale, and control the power of stars themselves. In less than 50 years, they went from primitive space travel to technology that could reshape the universe. And then they stopped. The leaders of that generation looked at what they had created and felt fear. Not fear of others, but fear of themselves. They realized that with this power, humanity could conquer every species in the galaxy. They could rule everything. They could become gods. But they did not want to be gods. They did not want to be conquerors. They wanted to be human. So they made a choice. They hid their power. They went silent. They let the galaxy believe that Earth was dead or primitive, and they made a law for themselves. Humanity would never use its power unless someone forced them to. For 400 years, no one had forced them, until now. Archivist O closed the file and looked at the battle on her screen. Of the 2,400 ships that had entered Sol space, 1,800 were now disabled, drifting, silent. The remaining 600 had clustered around the flagship in a desperate defensive formation. "We showed them mercy," she whispered. "They did not understand. Perhaps this time they will learn." She began writing in her record book, adding today's events to the long history of Earth's hidden defense. The entry was simple. "They came with 2,400 ships. We left them alive to tell others. May they be the last who need this lesson." But deep in her heart, O knew they would not be the last. The galaxy was full of empires like the proud, arrogant, certain of their own power. They would hear the stories, some would believe, others would not. And those who did not believe would come to Saul space to test the forbidden. They always did. Earth would be waiting. High Commander stood in chains on the bridge of the human flagship. His 4 hands were bound behind his back, and his proud head was forced to bow. Around him, human soldiers stood in perfect formation, their faces calm and their weapons ready. But they did not point their weapons at him. They did not need to. He was already defeated. Admiral walked slowly toward the captured commander. He studied with eyes that showed neither hatred nor triumph, only patience. "You came to our system with 2,400 warships," Admiral said quietly. "You ignored warnings that have stood for 500 years. You fired first, and now you stand here defeated, wondering how this happened." Raised his head. Even in chains, his pride burned in his eyes. "Why do you hide?" he demanded. "You have this power, you could rule the galaxy. Why do you pretend to be nothing?" Admiral was silent for a moment. Then he gestured to one of his officers, who brought a chair. The Admiral sat down facing, like a teacher preparing to explain something to a confused student. 500 years ago, my ancestors asked themselves the same question," he said. "They had developed technology beyond anything the galaxy had seen. They could crush stars. They could fold space. They could live forever if they chose. And they realized something terrible." He leaned forward. "They realized that power without wisdom is destruction. They looked at the galaxy and saw empires rising and falling, species conquering and being conquered, endless wars over resources and territory. And they asked themselves, if we join this game, what will we become? Did not understand. You would become rulers, masters of everything. Yes, and then we would become tyrants, and then we would become monsters." Admiral shook his head. "My ancestors chose a different path. They chose to hide their power, to let the galaxy forget about them, to develop their civilization in peace, away from the endless wars and politics of other species." He stood up and walked to the viewport, looking out at the stars. "We do not hide because we are weak. We hide because we are too strong, and we do not wish to use that strength unless we are forced to." On the disabled ships, human medical teams were working to help the wounded. They had brought food, water, and medicine. They treated injured soldiers alongside their own people. This confused the captured crews. They had expected torture. They had expected death. Instead, they received care. Dr. Park led a team onto one of the disabled cruisers. She found the engineering section and began explaining to the terrified engineers what had happened to their ship. "Your engines are not destroyed," she said. "They are locked. We can unlock them whenever we choose. Your weapons are the same, your communications too. Everything on your ship still works. We simply turned it off." A young engineer stared at her with wide eyes. "How is this possible? Our systems have encryption, security protocols. You should not be able to control our ships." Dr. Park smiled sadly. "Your encryption is based on mathematical principles that we mastered 400 years ago. To us, your security is like a lock made of paper. We do not hack your systems. We simply ask them to do what we want and they obey." She saw the fear in the young engineer's eyes and felt a wave of sympathy. "We are not monsters," she said gently. "We did not want this fight. Your leaders brought it to us, but we will not kill you for their mistakes. You will go home. You will tell your people what you saw, and perhaps they will learn to respect the forbidden zones." On the capital world of Prime, Emperor IV was losing his mind with worry. He had received the last transmission from before communications were cut. He had seen the footage of human ships appearing from nowhere, and then nothing. Silence. For 3 days he waited. His advisors whispered about disasters and defeats. His generals prepared defensive plans. His enemies in the royal court began to circle, sensing weakness. Then the transmissions started coming through. They were partial, broken, but clear enough. Video footage showed ships collapsing into balls of metal. Audio recordings captured the screams of crews as their vessels were disabled by weapons they could not see. And finally, one clear image. High Commander on his knees, his hands bound, his proud head bowed before a human officer. Emperor watched this footage in his private chambers. His 4 hands trembled. His old heart pounded in his chest. He had sent his greatest fleet to conquer a primitive system. Instead, his fleet had been destroyed by technology he could not understand. His wife, Empress, entered the chamber quietly. She was younger than still strong and sharp-minded. She had warned him against this invasion. He had not listened. "The council is gathering," she said. "They are demanding answers. Some are calling for your removal." Turned to face her. For the first time in decades, she saw fear in his eyes. They crushed 1,800 ships in less than a day. They did not even use their full power. Our intelligence officer says they were holding back. Nodded slowly. "I have contacted the Galactic Council. They are sending records from their ancient archives. Records that explain why Sol space was declared forbidden in the first place." "What do they say?" "They say that humanity is not a normal species. They advanced too fast. They discovered things that should not be possible, and when they realized what they had become, they chose to disappear." She paused. "The Council did not make Sol space forbidden to protect itself from humanity. It made Sol space forbidden to protect humanity from the galaxy." "Did not understand, to protect them." "Yes. The Council feared that if other species knew what humanity could do, they would attack out of fear. They would try to destroy the humans before the humans became a threat. So the Council created the Forbidden Zone. They told everyone to stay away. They hoped that humanity would remain hidden forever." "But we attacked them," whispered. "We forced them to reveal themselves." "Yes, and now every species in the galaxy will know what humanity can do. Every empire, every federation, every ambitious warlord." Eyes were hard. "You have not just destroyed our fleet, my husband. You have changed the balance of power in the entire galaxy." On Luna Base, Scout Bora was conducting a special operation. She was an intelligence officer trained to gather information and manipulate communications. Her mission today was simple: let one message escape. She had identified a communications officer on one of the disabled ships, a young woman named who was clever and determined. Bora had secretly adjusted the jamming field around that ship to allow one short transmission to reach the Empire. The message sent contained everything they needed to know: video of their crushed ships, audio of being captured, images of the human fleet in all its terrifying power, and one final piece, a recording of Admiral's voice. "You were warned. The warning was your mercy. There will be no second mercy." Bora watched the transmission leave the solar system. She knew what would happen next. The Emperor would see this footage and panic. He would gather his remaining forces. He would try to strike back. And humanity would be waiting. Diplomat was preparing the next phase of the plan. He was an older man with silver hair and a calm voice. For decades, he had studied alien cultures and languages, waiting for the day when humanity would speak to the galaxy again. That day had come. He sat in a communications room on Luna Base, composing humanity's first official message to the galaxy in 400 years. Every word had to be perfect. Every phrase had to carry meaning. When he was finished, he read the message to Admiral. "We offered peace through distance. You chose war through arrogance. Now learn what forbearance kept from you." The Admiral nodded. "Send it. Let every species in the galaxy hear. Let them understand what the Forbidden Zone truly means." The message launched into space, transmitted on every frequency in every language. It reached Prime. It reached the Galactic Council. It reached thousands of worlds across the known universe. And everywhere it went, it carried the same warning: Earth was not weak. Earth was not primitive. Earth had been sleeping by choice, and now it was awake. The Empire had wanted to know what hid in the Forbidden Zone. Now they knew, and that knowledge would haunt them forever. On the bridge of his captured flagship, High Commander heard the message. He heard it in his own language, broadcast to his own people, and he understood at last what he had done. He had not invaded a primitive system. He had kicked a sleeping dragon, and dragons, once awakened, do not simply go back to sleep. The consequences were just beginning. Emperor IV made the decision in desperation. He gathered every ship the Empire possessed, every battleship, every cruiser, every fighter, every transport that could carry weapons, 40,000 vessels from across 3,000 star systems, the largest fleet ever assembled in the history of the people. His advisors begged him to reconsider. His generals warned him that the First Fleet had been destroyed without inflicting a single casualty on the humans. His wife, Empress, pleaded with him to seek peace instead of war. But was beyond reason. His pride had been wounded. His greatest commander had been captured and humiliated. His empire looked weak in the eyes of the galaxy. He could not accept this. He would not accept this. The First Fleet was surprised, he told his council. They did not know what they faced. Now we know. We will overwhelm the humans with numbers they cannot match. 40,000 ships against their fleet. No force in the galaxy can survive such an assault. His son, Prince, stepped forward. He was young, barely 30 cycles old, with the strong build and bright eyes of royalty. Unlike his father, he had studied the footage from the first battle carefully. He had seen things that troubled him deeply. "Father," he said, "the humans disabled 1,800 ships without losing a single vessel. They did not even appear to be trying. What makes you believe 40,000 ships will succeed where 2,400 failed?" "Because I will lead them myself," replied. "I will not hide in the palace while others fight for me. The Emperor of the will personally crush these humans." But his health would not allow it. The old emperor collapsed the next day, his heart failing under the stress of the crisis. He was confined to his medical chambers, unable to lead the fleet he had assembled. Prince was given command instead. He did not want this responsibility. He had seen the videos. He had read the reports. He knew that his father was sending 40,000 crews to their deaths, but he could not refuse. The Empire expected him to fight. His father expected him to win. And part of him, the young and foolish part, wondered if maybe with enough ships, they really could defeat the humans. The fleet departed Prime in a parade that filled the sky with light. Citizens watched from the surface as ship after ship rose into space. Many wept with pride. Some wept with fear. None of them truly understood what their fleet was about to face. On Earth, General Wu Jin was preparing the defense. He was 61 years old, a veteran of countless simulations and training exercises. For his entire career, he had prepared for an enemy that never came. Now, finally, his moment had arrived. He stood in the command center of Earth's planetary defense grid, watching the approaching fleet on massive holographic displays. 40,000 ships. It was an impressive number. Any other species in the galaxy would have been terrified. General Wu Jin smiled. "Activate the shield," he ordered. Deep beneath the surface of Mars, massive generators came to life. Energy poured through conduits that stretched across the inner solar system. And then, slowly, a barrier began to form. Not a wall, not a field, something else entirely. Space itself curved inward around the inner planets. The very fabric of reality folded into a shell that enclosed the Sun, Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars. From the outside, it looked like a bubble of twisted light surrounding the heart of the solar system. The fleet reached this bubble and stopped. Prince stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Imperial Glory, and stared at the phenomenon before him. "What is that?" he asked. His science officer shook her head in disbelief. "It appears to be a spatial distortion field, Your Highness. They have bent space itself into a defensive barrier. Nothing can pass through it. Nothing we possess, at least." "Then we will break it," turned to his weapons officer. All ships target that barrier, maximum firepower, continuous bombardment. 40,000 ships opened fire at once. Plasma beams, nuclear missiles, kinetic rounds, and exotic weapons of every kind poured into the bubble. The assault was magnificent and terrible. It was enough firepower to destroy 100 worlds. The barrier did not even flicker. For 6 hours, the fleet fired everything they had. They emptied their ammunition stores. They drained their power cores. They burned out weapon systems that had never been used in actual combat. And when they were finished, the barrier remained exactly as it had been before. Not a single scratch, not a single weakness, not even a sign that it had noticed their assault. Inside the barrier, Scientist Ha was monitoring the attack from her station on Luna Base. She was 38 years old, a specialist in stellar manipulation, and the daughter of 2 scientists who had devoted their lives to Earth's defense systems. "The bombardment has stopped," she reported to Dr. Park. "They have exhausted their weapons." Dr. Park nodded. "Good, now show them the next level." Ha hesitated. "Are you certain? If we demonstrate stellar manipulation, they will know exactly how powerful we are. The entire galaxy will know." "That is the point," Dr. Park replied. "They came back with 40,000 ships because they thought they could overwhelm us with numbers. We need to show them that numbers mean nothing. We need to show them that we could destroy their entire empire without leaving our own system." Ha took a deep breath, then she entered the commands. Outside the barrier, Prince was preparing to order a retreat. There was no point in staying. His fleet could not break through. His weapons were empty. His crews were exhausted and terrified. It was time to go home and admit defeat. But before he could give the order, something impossible happened. The sun moved. Not much, just a tiny shift in position, barely noticeable at first, but the gravitational effects cascaded through the entire solar system. Planets adjusted their orbits, asteroids changed course, and the fleet, positioned in precise formation around the barrier, was suddenly caught in a web of shifting forces. Ships spun out of control. Navigation systems failed as their reference points changed. Crews screamed as artificial gravity fluctuated wildly. Thousands of vessels crashed into each other, too disoriented to maintain formation. Prince gripped his command chair as his flagship tumbled through space. "What is happening?" he shouted. "They moved their star," his science officer whispered, her face pale with terror. "They actually moved their star. That is impossible. That should be impossible. No species has that capability. No species should have that capability." Understood then. His father had been wrong. Everyone had been wrong. The humans were not a threat to be eliminated. They were not an enemy to be conquered. They were something far more terrifying. They were gods pretending to be mortals. And gods do not lose wars to mortals. He opened communications to the entire fleet. His voice was steady, though his hands were shaking. "All ships, this is Prince. Stand down, power down all weapons, shut down all aggressive systems." He paused and closed his eyes. "We surrender, unconditionally." Silence followed. 40,000 crews waited to see what would happen next. The barrier around the inner planets slowly dissolved. The sun returned to its original position. And then, from within the solar system, a single human ship emerged. It was small compared to the warships, but every sensor in the fleet tracked it with terrified attention. Admiral's voice came through the communications system. "Prince, your surrender is accepted. You will hold position and await further instructions. Any ship that attempts to flee or power weapons will be disabled. This is not a negotiation. This is a statement of fact." Bowed his head. "We understand." Around him, 40,000 ships drifted in silence. The greatest fleet ever assembled by the Empire, defeated without a single shot being fired against them, defeated by a species that had hidden from the galaxy for 400 years. On Luna Base, General Wu Jin watched the surrender with quiet satisfaction. He turned to Scientist Ha. "Well done," he said. "The stellar shift was impressive." Ha shook her head. "We moved the sun less than a millimeter. It was the smallest demonstration we could make." And it was enough. General Wu Jin looked at the holographic display showing 40,000 surrendered ships. "Now comes the hard part." "What do you mean?" "We have shown them our sword. Now we must convince them that we will never use it." He sighed. "We must make them understand that we do not want to rule them. We do not want to destroy them. We want to go back to sleep and let the galaxy forget about us again." Ha frowned. "Is that still possible after everything they have seen?" General Wu Jin did not answer, but in his heart he knew the truth. The galaxy would never forget about Earth again. The forbidden zone had been revealed. The sleeping giant had been awakened. And nothing would ever be the same.